just either slightly different from what they are, or we talk, we see things are not normal.
Welcome to Strange Familiars. If you have a story you'd like to share, if you've seen something strange like a cryptid, Bigfoot, Mothman, a UFO, a ghost, anything unusual, or if you know of a story you think we should cover, you can email us, strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com. We also have a voicemail line if you'd like to call and leave a voicemail. If you have a short encounter, you can do that. It's 717-347-8554. If you get cut off, you can call back and continue your story.
And that is just strictly an encounter line.
Yes. Again, that's 717-347-8554. Yes, thank you for bringing that up.
It's unfortunately not a customer service line.
If you have a story you want to tell me that you can't leave a message, it's best just to email me. If you have a problem with Patreon or some kind of technical problem with the podcast, it's best just to email me. The voicemail line is really kind of meant for encounters. We don't generally have the ability to reply to those messages. So if you leave a message...
Yeah, and it's not like it goes to a cell phone or anything.
It doesn't go to a cell phone. It's just a Google voice line. So it actually is kind of more difficult if you leave a message there than if you just email me at strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com. So it's not a quick way to get in touch with us, in other words. It's good for encounters, if you want to call and leave your encounter, but not so good for other things. Ambush time. You didn't know this was coming. I didn't talk to you about this beforehand.
Okay.
But I want to talk about something, and maybe this is perfectly normal, but this is a good example if this was something that was perfectly normal, that we saw near Site 7.
You and I?
Yeah.
What did we see?
Well, remember, it was going across a field, and it looked huge.
Oh, yeah. Is that near Site 7? I've never been there.
Yes, that's near Site 7.
Oh.
It's
I feel like I'm in the know now.
it's within a mile and a half of Site 7.
Oh, yeah. I totally thought some sort of mechanical, oversized panther or something was in... I couldn't figure out what it was. And we both were like...
It looked huge. Now, we were on the way to an appointment. It wasn't like horrible things would happen if we'd be late, but we were on the on the way to an appointment. And it was unusual enough where even you were like, go ahead and pull down that road.
I couldn't figure out what was happening. Like, what it was
very
like a weird
strange
trick of perspective.
That's what I'm going to put it down to, a strange trick of perspective. But it was strange. It looked huge. At
first, I thought it was a humongous horse.
I thought it was like somebody on a tractor going across a field, like a big farm tractor.
Yeah, and then the closer we got, it was like the more it ran and the closer it got to the house, the more it sort of subtly turned into a dog. Just a black dog.
A large, but within normal large
with
scope
a big fluffy
dog.
Tail and
yeah, but when it was
friendly,
going through that field, it looked massive.
And to me, it looked like mechanical. Like,
yeah, that's why I said tractor.
Yeah, it didn't look like it had like really kind of like disjointed kind of movements. It didn't look like...
It looked weird, and then we couldn't tell what was the head and what was the tail at some point. Yeah, because
it looked like the tail was up. Like, it was probably just a real friendly guy just enjoying running around, and so his tail was up in the air, which kind of made it look like a head from the other way. Yeah, it was...
It looked the size of a horse, at least, when we initially saw it. And then... as we pulled off onto the side road so we could see it some more, and it seemed like it gets closer to this house and it just becomes, like I said, a large dog, but within a normal, natural largeness scale. But it was weird. I mean, it was strange. So maybe an optical illusion, but still perhaps worth noting, I guess. You know, maybe things can look a lot huger than they really are. Or maybe we saw something weird. I don't know. I mean, it was very, very strange. Strange enough to make us pull over when we were on the way to an appointment. More adventures at Site 7. So I'll have to go back there soon. Now that the leaves are off the trees, I'll have to go back and see if...
I'll have to go back there now that I know where it is.
You still don't know exactly where it is.
No.
But you have a good idea. So on tonight's show, I will be talking with Tyler, who is an awesome artist. And I'll put his links in the show notes to his Instagram. Very, very unique style. Really cool. I really like his stuff. But he has a number of these experiences with these weird orbs that were appearing that he saw. Also a white entity and some other experiences throughout his life. But the main things he talks about are these kind of orbs that were appearing in his bedroom that he and his then fiance, I think, or girlfriend, now it's his wife, both saw them. So it's
that's always like the corroboration's always a good.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and talk to Tyler. We are talking with Tyler tonight, who contacted me originally, I think, through Instagram. And man, you're a fantastic artist.
Thank you.
Before we get going, I guess your day job is what, a graphic designer?
Yeah.
And then you're doing illustration on the side?
Yeah, I wanted to be a comic artist as a kid, and I had sort of a music career, and then I got married and had kids, and now I'm a designer, but sort of coming back around to the, sort of illustrative comic side of stuff. So,
what's your Instagram so people can check it out? And I'll put a couple pieces.
I think it's
show notes as well.
Tyler Bence, TYLERBENCE_art.
Okay. We'll make sure, and I'll put that in the show notes because it's awesome stuff. I absolutely love it. Your style is really unique and really, really cool. I absolutely love it.
Right on. Thank you so much.
But we're not here to talk about art necessarily.
No.
You were telling me that you had quite a few experiences throughout your life.
Quite a few. And like I had mentioned before with you, it's funny because I've kind of held back and I haven't called in. I listened to like several different shows, and you would sort of touch on something, and I'd be like, man, that's kind of crazy. I've kind of had something like that too. And then you'd have another guest or over on Soraya's show, somebody else would mention something, and it'd be like, man, I've experienced that too. So, I figured it was time that I called in and, I guess put it all out there.
Yeah. And we had like several conversations, and they would keep twisting and turning, and eventually I said, let's just talk about it on the show. Let's talk about it on the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
What do you want to start with?
I guess something kind of like a brief, kind of quick synopsis of like sort of, I guess the first sort of experience. So my mom and my dad split when I was like 5 or 6. And I lived with my mom. She was a single mother. And then my dad kind of came around, 8 or 9. And by then he had remarried to a woman that was kind of a weird situation. She had several husbands that had, mysteriously kind of passed away. And it was like this sort of plantation house in Elberton, Georgia, kind of close to Athens, Georgia. So anyway, my dad kind of came back around, and I started going down, he would have me every other weekend. The house was beautiful. It was huge, but it was just a creepy house as a kid. It's like winding staircase and like a library at the end of the hall, and kind of a nuts sort of house. I'm sure I would think it was amazing now, but back then it was just odd. It never felt comfortable. And what's funny is I refused to sleep in the bed because it was just weird. I would stay downstairs and watch TV and just fall asleep on the couch. And so, as I guess I would have been like 9 or 10, I came down and they were like, well, you're kind of getting older, and we have a new, bedroom suit, and, you really need to start sleeping in the bed. And so I just immediately kind of had a natural aversion to it. I didn't like it, but it was like, well, maybe they're right. And so, all I remember is I remember sleeping on my back, and I guess if if I was laying in the bed, like right in front of me would be a wall with like a fireplace, and then to the left of the fireplace would be the closet. And then if you kind of immediately turned to the closet left, it was sort of the entrance of how you'd walk into the room. And so I heard a sound that woke me up because everything was loud in that house because it was really old, you know. And the sound was the knob turning from the closet. And I was just like immediately terrified, like just dead still, dead silent, you know. I'm like holding my breath, and just sort of out of my periphery, I kind of see this sort of dark figure kind of like walk over to the end of the bed, and it just kind of stands there. And it was, you know, at the time, and even up until, you know, several years ago, that I learned that it was, you know, I guess a shadow person or whatever, but it was the most terrifying, you know, malevolent sort of feeling ever. And, you know, again, just like 9 times out of 10, I laid there and I was freaking out. And I just remember just like pouring with sweat because I was just super scared, and the blankets were covered up, you know, but I was like afraid to move. And so I'm laying on my back. So I'm kind of looking up at the ceiling. I guess my eyes are kind of half shut, you know, but I can kind of still see sort of at the foot of the bed. And the weirdest thing was, it was sort of like, and I think I've heard you mention it before, you know, it being like blacker than black. And it was like that, but there was a sort of a street light kind of down the road. And so the window, there was like a little bit of light coming through, and it wasn't like a black hole kind of thing, but it was more like it's almost like velvet, like crushed velvet. You know how you kind of see like a sheen sort of, you know, it was kind of like that. And then, I mean, even still to this day, the scariest part is that, because I've heard people talk about it and they're like, well, you know, it was almost like a cardboard cutout, and it was just real stiff. But the scariest part was like, I can still see it, but like it was almost like it was like shifting its weight, you know, like if you're standing for a long time and like you'll kind of like shift your weight, like a shoulder will drop, and then, you know, like I was saying, 9 times out of 10, just magically, I fell asleep, and then woke up, and you know, and so honestly,
that aspect where people just fall asleep is, I mean, it's so prominent now
in everything, every single story almost you hear.
People are terrified and they fall right to sleep. It's like, what's going on with that?
It's super weird. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, to this day, I still like, that's probably the scariest thing that I've ever experienced. Actually, so much so that I literally stopped going to my dad's for like 2 years.
Wow.
And I would just make an excuse of like, oh, you know, I have baseball or, you know, whatever. But yeah, it like really, really struck a nerve. So
did you see whatever it was? Did it walk from the closet?
So yeah, so that's what's crazy. So you know, there would have had to be some sort of corporal element to it, because, you know, it's like those really old sort of knobs, you know, like doorknobs. And then so it was like, and yeah, so the door would have opened, and then it sort of just kind of like slid across the room, and then just stood at the foot of the bed until I don't know if I like passed out, or, I mean, I guess nobody knows, you know,
right,
but
yeah. And you couldn't notice any particular details at all as far as
no, like
face or anything?
No, nothing like that. And I've even thought, you know, I've tried to really think about like, well, did it have like a hat on? Because, you know, like the Hat Man thing.
Right.
And I mean, not really. I can't really think of anything, you know, to that effect. It just kind of looked like a really tall man. And I mean, I was 9 or 10, so you know, even an average size, you know, guy would have been big, but I mean, at the time it seemed really tall. So
yeah, that's creepy, man. For a kid to have something come out of the closet, I mean,
yeah,
you know, right out of every kid's nightmare, right?
Oh, it's terrifying. Well, and then to even add insult to injury, I had mentioned it I didn't tell my dad like what had happened or whatever, but I had mentioned something about the closet, and he was like, "Oh, well, you know that that's the only way that you can get up into the attic." And apparently there was something like some story that he had heard from like somebody that lived in the town that knew like a previous owner back in the day. But, they had said that they had heard a story that like somebody had like one of the slaves or two or something had like committed suicide in the attic but who knows? I don't know if there's any truth to any of that, but
right.
It was weird.
I grew up in a farmhouse built in the 1800s, I think 1860s or something, maybe 1870s.
Oh, wow.
And, my one bedroom, after all my brothers moved out, they had the big bedroom, and I moved into the big bedroom, and it kind of became an art studio as much as a bedroom at this point. I was the last of 6 kids, so none of my other siblings were living at home still, so I kind of had all the old bedrooms were mine to play with, basically, other than my parents' room,
Oh, wow.
I slept in one, made an art studio in the other, but I was sleeping in the one that I was using mostly for an art studio. It also had a bed in it, so I could sleep in there. And for whatever reason, sleeping in there one night, and there was a sort of a spiral staircase that went up to the attic, or half spiral, I guess. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and the door was open. It had never been open. We didn't use that part of the attic. We didn't go up that way.
Wow.
Just in the middle of the night, I wake up and it was open. And that was, from that point on, it was taped shut.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Yeah. Whatever that was, I wanted none of it. So I just taped it shut from that point. So it wouldn't, be no chance of it coming open. Hopefully. Well, it didn't again. So, but I didn't see anything or anything. I just woke up and it was open. That's enough.
Yeah, that's enough.
So where are we going next?
So I guess kind of shortly, well, and also kind of a backstory. Like I was upset. Like I had an aunt who, well, first of all, I grew up in North Georgia near like Cleveland, Helen, that kind of area, real rural people. Like my whole family are, farmers and, just working blue collar, people. But I had an aunt who was, she was kind of the only person, I guess, that I had in my family. I actually have her name tattooed on my chest, but she was like the only person in the family who was all about like imagination. And I was a really imaginative kid. I wanted to be a comic artist and I didn't really care about sports or anything like that. So she was like really big into like, she was like a huge Stephen King fan. And that was like the first time that I'd ever heard of, Stephen King, like when I was a kid. And so she was kind of my lifeline. So I was really big into like, I guess you would say the paranormal, I guess. Back then I feel like it was different because, like I specifically remember going on vacation and just renting all these or checking out all these books from the library, and it'd be like, one on Loch Ness and the other on, one of the Time Life, UFO books. And like, I was just obsessed with all that kind of stuff. So, anyway, when I was 11 or 12, I had a buddy and I, it was actually my birthday. And so I can't remember roughly, it was like when I was either turning 11 or turning 12. So the only real time that I've seen like a UFO situation was we were like camping out in the front yard for my birthday party, and all the other kids at the party had, fallen asleep. It was like kind of late, like 12 or 1. It was me and then my buddy from New Hampshire, and we were all into like any kind of supernatural stuff. And so we were just like staying up, just like, talking or whatever, and everybody else had passed out. And so I can't remember if it was me or if it was him, but one of us noticed that there was something like moving outside, like in the sky. And we kind of like jumped up and like unzipped the tent and like went out into the yard, and we were like looking around and couldn't see anything. And after doing that several times, we realized that like we were able to see something that was in the sky, and it was kind of, like flitting around. But for some odd reason, it was only whenever the screen was zipped, which is really odd because I had read like an article years and years later. It was talking about, certain, I don't know if it would be like a frequency, but it would basically be like certain things, you could only see if if certain, I don't know, like through like refraction or through almost like a screen type thing.
Filters and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like a filter. Yeah. But that was it was insane because it lasted for, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 minutes. And it was like we couldn't believe what we were seeing. Stupidly, we kept like unzipping the tent and then going outside. And it was like, no, it's only when we're looking through the little zip down screen. So, so that was pretty wild.
What did it look like?
I mean, we really could, it was at night and in North Georgia, like the stars are all pretty bright. So, it was just like a reddish, orangish, kind of whitish. I guess it was kind of changing, but I mean, you would just kind of see it like moving across the sky, and it would make these sharp, 90-degree turns, and then it would kind of blink out, and we wouldn't see it for a couple minutes, and then it would just like pop back up, which was wild. Yeah. So
yeah, the 90-degree turns. I mean, very few things can do that, and even if you were at speed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, that kind of got us into like the whole UFO thing. But I haven't really seen anything since. That was kind of the one and only. I would love to see a UFO, but that was about it. So I went to high school. I wanted to be a comic artist, and then long story short, I started a band. Like in the meantime, I got accepted to a school called the Joe Kubert School in New Jersey.
I'm familiar with it.
Comic. Yeah. And I was supposed to go there, and I was like, well, I'll take a year off and make some money. And I just started like a little band, and everything just kind of kicked off. And, I like wrote pretty much all the music, and I realized that like everything just came really easy as far as like songwriting and stuff. And so ended up getting a record deal to like an indie label in Alabama. And then, we did a ton of touring, like Warped Tour and a whole bunch of stuff. So, that was several years. And then probably when I was like 22 or 23, we had gotten out of that contract because it had kind of gotten shady and there was some stuff. So I'd come home and,
always do.
Every single time, which is funny because I have the same thing happens like, several years after that again. So, but yeah, so I'd come back, and the same house that we saw the UFO, the house that I grew up in, there was like a little loft space beside it. So it was kind of like a 2-car garage underneath, and then you would go upstairs and it would just be like one sort of big open kind of loft area space. And it was where we would have band practice and stuff before. So I'd come home, and like the band was still going, but I was no longer, we were no longer living in Alabama and touring and stuff. So I set up a bed, and it was kind of a temporary thing. So I remember I was there for probably 3 or 4 months. And this is like where things get crazy. And this is probably where I have more questions for you than anything. Cause like this kind of kicks off everything. So, I was laying in the bed, and I didn't have cable, didn't have a TV or anything at the time, cause I'd just moved everything up there. And I was sort of facing to my left, and then, I would like, if you face to your left, like you're looking out and you can see the whole room. But then if I turn right, the bed kind of ends, and then there's a foot between the bed and like the wall. And then there was like a little power, like jack input that, I would watch like a laptop, like watch movies while I was falling asleep or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so it was plugged into the wall. So, and it was like an old laptop, so it would get like really, really hot. So I was sleeping, and I kind of like woke up to behind me. It was like, it looked like the whole loft was like on fire. And there was like a millisecond of just sheer panic where I was like, oh my God, I left the laptop on the bed, and, the whole place is burning up. So I immediately like jump over and, jump to the right of me and like kind of look over like the edge of the bed. And there it was, the first time that I'd ever seen it. It was like a little, I mean, I hate the word orb, but it was like a little ball that was probably the size of like, I don't know, like a baseball, but it was like self-illuminating, and it was just kind of like wobbling next to where the wall was. And as soon as I like, jumped over to, cause I was on like the the one side of the bed, and so I kind of, hoisted myself over, and I was able to like just barely look over the edge of the bed. And it was like, as soon as I did that, it just sort of, I don't know, just kind of wobbled into the wall and then just disappeared.
Huh.
Which was insane. And so, I didn't see anything else, like that at the time, but probably several weeks later, and this is another thing that's I have no idea what this would be, or, so if you've heard of anything like this, let me know. But, it was like, I woke up in the middle of the night, and, I was really, we were out in the country. So like there were two big windows on each side of the loft. So on the one side, it faced our driveway, and it was like a big valley, and, the driveway would work its way out to the main road. And then on the other side of the loft was like you could look out back, cause we had like pastures and stuff where we would keep our horse and stuff. And so it was like, I just woke up in the middle of the night, and I wasn't really scared or anything, but I was kind of notorious for, I was by myself. So I was notorious for like always going to the windows and just making sure, everything's okay, which I still do that. But it was weird. I just woke up randomly, kind of walked over and looked out like the back window, and I opened it up like I would always do. And I stuck my head out. And as I was doing that, I could see kind of below me, which would have been, I don't know, maybe not even 20 feet away. It was just this sort of, it was like really dark. I guess the moon wasn't really out that night, but it was really dark. But it was just like a white kind of figure, I guess. But the weirdest thing is like it was like on a train track or something. It like the closest thing I can describe it is like in Home Alone, when Kevin puts the cardboard cutout like on the train track. Mm-hmm. And it's like there were no like no gate in the walk or anything like that, but it was just kind of gliding, and it started heading towards, like, my grandmother lived like down the hill, like probably, I don't know, not quite a quarter of a mile, but like her house, you could see it, and it was just right down the way from ours. And so this thing just kind of slowly kind of glided, and it kind of disappeared in the woods. So I ran to the other side, the other window that was in the front, and opened the window, and I could see, I like stuck my head out, and I could see she had like a motion detector light, and I didn't see anything. And I'm like waiting. I'm like, God, like, what is that? And sure enough, all of a sudden I see the motion light come on, and I see this white thing just kind of like zip right on by like her house.
Wow.
So I have no idea. Like, have you ever heard of anything that just kind of like glides like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, so many Bigfoot reports that talk about them moving like that. They say they look like they're cross country skiing, or they're just gliding along the ground or something like that. They describe it very, very similarly, like there's no gate. Did this have a humanoid form?
I mean, it was like really dark, like I was saying. So, I mean, I would say yes, but I really couldn't make out, much of it. I mean, and if it wouldn't have done sort of the gliding thing, I would have thought like, okay, maybe somebody's trying to like, break in, or like in the, like the storage, or like the carport, like beneath me or whatever. Yeah, it was just the weirdest thing. And I mean, it was kind of, I guess it was kind of fast too, sort of. I mean, not like, it would be like if you were not like full sprint, but if you were kind of jogging, it would be like that sort of speed, but it was just gliding on by.
And it wasn't like glowing white. It was just seemed like it was white in color.
Yeah. Kind of, I mean, maybe somewhat reflective from like the whatever moon was out, Mm-hmm. But yeah, there was no like illumination or anything.
So it seemed like moving on two legs, though.
Maybe like I couldn't really tell. It was almost like it was just humanoid sort of size, and I mean, maybe I could see like sort of arms, but it looked pretty stationary as far as the body. But again, it goes back to it. Whatever it was would have had to have some sort of form that, would have set off like the motion light down my grandmother's.
Right.
Which is really weird.
Yeah, that's
so yeah. Yeah.
And it appeared to be just normal human size ish, in that range.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. I don't remember granted I was like sort of looking down from like a 2-story sort of garage loft kind of thing. So, my perspective was a little off, but yeah, I would say maybe, I wouldn't say it was tall. I would say maybe, I don't know, anywhere from 5 to 5.5, feet tall.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah. I've gotten a number of reports of Bigfoot, because just that's my main thing, but that I'm writing the book and so forth. But other entities too, where people describe this kind of very smooth gliding like motion when it walks. There's no like up and down bounce, like a human when they walk. It's just
that's so weird.
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, I don't even know what that's about.
Yeah, who knows? The accounts that you've heard, are they sort of like Sasquatch, Bigfoot?
For the most part.
The look of them?
Yeah, for the most part. And again, people just say like whatever it was, it didn't, humans kind of do that bounce when they walk a little bit.
Right, yeah.
And they say that it doesn't. And of course, your guys who believe they're just giant monkeys that are undiscovered. This is because they have a mid-tarsal break and they're extremely efficient in their locomotion, and they don't do the up and down thing. But then you start hearing these other reports where people say, they saw little gnome men or aliens or something else, and they move that way too. You get again, this is one of those descriptions that kind of goes across the board.
Well, and I remember I'd looked online a lot, and I think I'd ran across something where somebody had, I cannot remember, but it was something like in regards to like the Appalachia and like granny magic and like I guess there was a term called they called them like white shadows or something. And I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but
I haven't, but I'm very, very interested because just in our experiences at that place we call Site 7, and then in general talking to other people, the number of people who are reporting seeing white creatures it far outnumbers the possibility of something being albino. Like
albino,
I have the figures in the new book. I forget what it is, but the instance of albinism is very, very small in animals.
It's pretty rare, yeah.
So if you're talking about a rare animal to begin with, if we're talking about an animal, and then what percentage of that rare animal would be, would have albinism, and then people, how often would people see that? And then suddenly I'm getting reports from all over, people seeing stuff. And honestly, everything we've ever seen at that Site 7 area, anybody's ever seen at that Site 7 area, except one time a woman saw something that she said it looked like a really large otter or something, like a giant otter. That was brown.
Oh, weird.
But everything else strange that anybody's ever seen there has been white or gray.
Really?
Yeah. And it's just like, I have no clue. But so I'm going to have to look up these white shadows. That's very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, I wish that I could remember. I mean, this was years ago, but yeah, all I remember is it was some site that was sort of, I can't remember if it was like a forum or it was something related to Appalachia and like sort of that side of the paranormal, or that little pocket of paranormal.
Right. Yeah, that sounds very, very interesting.
It was
going to require
like, and what's funny too is, even just the term like a white shadow, that sounds like, oh yeah, that sounds like a thing, but I'd never heard of it until then. So so moving on.
Well, before we move on, the orb that you woke up and saw. So when you woke up and you said you thought the room was on fire, was all that light coming from the orb, or was that?
The whole room was like completely lit up, and it was all from that.
Wow.
Like literally to the point where, and again, it was, like half a second or something before I, woke up in panic and looked over, to where the light was coming from. But, it was like, I literally thought like, I'm going to burn to death. Like,
wow,
this place is, going up in flames. But yeah, as soon as I again, this is why originally, and the orb thing kind of keeps going on. I guess that's like one of the main things that I have sort of questions about, for you. But I kind of feel like I'm a little bit of an anomaly because this stuff, like this particular loft that I live in, and it, again, I don't know. I thought originally like, well, maybe it's some sort of, environmental anomalous fluctuation with, some kind of magnetic thing because, there was like, pretty large Native American encampments in the area. And then it's right in the middle of the loft. Like if you look down into the pasture, what I was talking about, there's basically two creeks that converge into one. And so there's all this, your typical sort of ghost kind of thing. They'd be like, oh, well, that's gotta be it. But yeah, there's a whole lot more of like the orb stuff, but yeah, I guess the thing that sort of separates me and like a lot of other people is like, I mean, even just that first, sort of experience, I was literally 2 feet from it.
Wow.
So I was like right up on it, and it just kind of wobbled and then immediately just like disappeared.
Did it look like it had dimension to it? Did it look like like a globe kind of?
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because I've thought about this a lot, but yes, but then I don't know. There's something about it, like the way it would just sort of phase into the wall that is sort of like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's kind of like some sort of like plasma or like like ball lightning or which after I tell you some of the stuff that happens eventually, I feel like a lot of that stuff kind of gets discredited. But yeah, I mean, it felt like it kind of had mass, but then then again it was able just to kind of pass through the wall.
Right.
And then I didn't even mention this, but as soon as it did that, I mean, I was like freaking out. I'm like, what is this? Again, I jumped up as fast as I could and I ran to the front of the loft and like opened the window and, because it would have phased out into like the, probably, I don't know, 12 feet up from the ground below. Mm-hmm. So it would have, and there was nothing. So I don't know. It's really weird.
We'll get back to our interview with Tyler in a moment. I want to take this time to thank our patrons. Thank you so much, patrons. All of you are the reason why Strange Familiars exists. At this point, we don't get any support other than our patrons, so we cannot thank you enough. If you like Strange Familiars and you'd like to help us continue to make content, you can become a patron at Patreon. That's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. We do at least one full exclusive episode of Strange Familiars for our patrons every month. We try to do more. Some months we've done as many as 3, I think. And we give other benefits besides. I try to give discounts on my music when I do a new record or special offers and stuff throughout the year on different things. But at $3 a month, you will get that one full episode and the satisfaction of knowing that you're helping make Strange Familiars happen. Patrons, thank you so much for your support. Patreon.com/strangefamiliars. If you do not like the idea of a recurring subscription like Patreon and you just want to help us out with a one-time donation, in the show notes under every episode at strangefamiliars.com is a paypal.me link. You can make a one-time donation that way. Everyone can help by sharing the show on social media, by liking and subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Himalaya is what I use, Podbean, whatever podcatcher you use.
Your phone?
I think that's a little general, but
That's how I listen to podcasts.
Whatever podcatcher you use, make sure to like and subscribe and to leave us those nice 5-star reviews because that helps put the show in front of new potential listeners. And now back to our interview with Tyler. So how many times have you seen the orbs?
So and again, the only place that I've ever seen these things was at my mom, on my mom's house, the house that I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I said, I was home for a while, and then we ended up getting signed to Interscope Records, and I moved to LA for, I don't know, almost 4 years, 3.5, 4 years. And then I came back, and I would have been around like 27-ish, 26, 27. And at the time, my fiance at the time, my wife now, we've been married for 10 years, this October, but, she would come up and hang out and stuff. And so, I had seen that years and years ago. And honestly, I didn't really think anything about it. And I remember, and she's really, like, both of us are Christians, but I'm like probably really open-minded as far as, this kind of stuff goes. But for her, it's a little more like, okay, if there's anything that's like sort of paranormal related, it's got to be bad, or it's like,
mm-hmm.
It's dark. But for me, I'm just like, oh no, maybe it's some sort of electromagnetic thing or whatever. But so anyway, again, it had happened years ago, and I hadn't really thought about it. So I was by myself. She wasn't there. And at this point, I had started up another band, and we were touring again too. Like we toured with Kings of Leon and the Strokes, and had like a really great life, really. So, but I remember we had played somewhere and got in really, really late, and it was just before the sun was coming up, and I'm laying in bed, and then so directly in front of me I had like my drafting table, like art desk. It was like, again, I'm kind of looking up at the ceiling, but out of my periphery, sort of in front of me, I guess. Same kind of thing. It was like something caught my eye, and it was this little, maybe a little bit smaller than the first one. So maybe like a tennis ball, or maybe a little bit smaller. Mm-hmm. But this one was like blue. And I didn't have a feeling of like, oh man, this is dark. This is, and another thing like about me is like, I kind of hate the whole sensitive thing, but I think there is some reality to it. And so I've always kind of had like a discernment for certain things, like, hey, we need to get out of here. Or, hey, like if something was sort of bad, it was like, I can kind of, feel it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think I try to explain it that, like, look, nobody has superpowers, right? We all have access to this stuff, but it's just like art. Some people just happen to have a little more skill, and some people practice and develop that skill. It's just, I mean? Exactly. I think it's like that, but, and anyway, sorry, proceed.
No. I totally agree. So yeah, I kind of see it, and it was like, there was a part of me I was like, man, I really just like want to look at this thing. But it was like, I kind of knew that, that like, I don't know, it was like, I had the feeling of, well, if I look directly at it, it's going to see me and it's going to disappear. And like, sure enough, I couldn't like keep looking at the ceiling and just watch it, out of my periphery. So, I just kind of like lifted my head up and looked at it, and yeah, it was like, it knew exactly when my eyes were on it, and same kind of thing. It was like, but this one was kind of a little faster. And it just sort of, blipped into the wall. And I didn't even catch this while it was happening, but as soon as it like had disappeared, I realized like that my eyes were like pouring tears. I wasn't crying or anything, but it was like I don't know, some kind of like physiological response or something. And
now, were they burning? Like, you know what I mean? From the
no. I mean, at least I don't think so. But no, it just felt, it would be like if you had like really bad allergies, and your eyes are just watering or something. but there wasn't any kind of like fear or like shock or anything like that that would sort of trigger that like tear response. It was just, I don't know, it was weird. It was the first time that anything like that had ever happened.
Yeah, that's strange. I think you told me a little bit about that because I had talked about that. Friend of mine who was doing the pendulum dowsing with the spirit contact, and I was overcome by, and I wasn't, like I said, I didn't feel particularly sad. I just suddenly I'm just crying. It was very strange, almost like something took over my tear ducts.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, when I had heard yours, I was thinking that I thought that you were talking about more like, that you were like sort of physically crying, whereas with mine there was like no other sort of symptoms other than like just my eyes were just like pouring.
No, I mean, I don't even think I knew I was crying until one of these two women looked at me and said, "Oh, he's crying," and like I said, I didn't feel particularly sad or connected to this, whatever this, this so-called entity that they were contacting. I didn't feel any, particular connection or anything. I was sort of a passive observer, and suddenly and I wasn't, like I said, I didn't feel particularly sad or anything. I was just kind of there. But it upset them enough where they stopped. I remember they're like, "Oh, we better stop. It's really affecting him." And I was just kind of more confused than anything else. Like, what? I'm all right, I think.
That is crazy. I mean, what do you think? What do you think that is?
I don't know. I don't know for a second, and I hadn't thought about it, for a long time until I don't even remember how it came up in whatever show that was. And when you contact me about it afterwards, I thought a little bit more about it. I was like, I really wasn't. I wasn't invested in the procedure particularly. At least I didn't feel like I was. I felt like I was just a very passive observer. So I don't know if there was some kind of subconscious, emotional response or something. I can't really say. I can't speak to it, but it was. Yeah. I remember being sort of like I didn't know I was crying until they pointed it out, and then I was like, "Oh, okay," just being sort of. Not freaked out necessarily, but just kind of not understanding like what's going on. Yeah, the mechanics of the tear,
right?
In a sense.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and what's weird about mine too is so that was the first one, and then probably in the next following like several weeks or month, honestly they kind of started getting like a little more like frequent. Like I saw another one that was like across the room. This one was like a little bigger. And like, that was the thing too, is like the size would always kind of change. Like I would say like the smallest one that I ever saw was like, like a bouncy ball. And then the biggest one would be like maybe a little bigger than like a softball kind of thing. But yeah, it got to where like the frequency was kind of crazy. And what's really crazy is, I would say maybe, so that would have been the second one that I'd ever seen, and I just moved back. And then, like I said, like the following month, I saw like a really, really tiny one across the room, and the same kind of thing. It was like they were only like around the baseboards. They were never like up in the air or anything like that. And again, there was no like sort of malevolent, like dark or evil or demonic or anything like that. Like it just felt like, I don't know, it almost felt like they were like curious or something, as weird as that sounds, because at this point I was thinking it's got to be some kind of like where we are, or like our maybe there's some kind of like mineral underground that's like
some kind of environmental factor, that's
something something that we just scientifically we don't quite understand yet. And I kept thinking about like plasma, and I grew up like a comic kid, so the plasma, like every superhero has like their energy blasts and stuff. Right. And so it just kind of felt like something like that, as weird as that sounds. But so as it kept going, I'd seen a really tiny one, and then like a grapefruit or like softball size one. And again, the colors would always kind of change too. It'd always be like either sort of this bluish, whitish kind of thing, or like an orange, red, white, kind of changing kind of colors, but they would never change from like one color to the next. So it kind of felt like, okay, well that one's just, his color is blue, or
gotcha. Yeah.
but so in seeing those like 2 more times by this point, the second time the same thing happened where as soon as I like caught it out of the corner of my eye, it was like my eyes just started, pouring again. But then by the third one, I'm trying to think. I think I was like reading or maybe drawing or something in the bed. And I saw it like out of the corner of my eye, but like probably like 20 or 30 seconds before, like my eyes just started like streaming like before it happened. And so that's, to me, like, I would love to hear your take on that, because it was, and every time after that, it was like this response mechanism was happening before I would even see them.
Yeah, I don't even know what to make of that unless it's, whatever. Before your eyes are seeing them, your body knows they're there somehow.
Yeah, right.
That's the only thing I could possibly. So I'm thinking that this is an odd thing, but there were these potato chips I would eat when I was young, and they had Old Bay. I don't know if you have Old Bay down there.
Oh yeah, I love Old Bay. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were Old Bay potato chips. They were really spicy. At least they seemed like that as a kid. Now you can't get them anymore. Now they've just changed them to crab chips, and they taste different. But
wait, are they made by a company called Oots or something?
Yeah, Utz. Yeah.
Utz. Yeah.
Yeah.
We toured all over the U.S. So like we used to get them up north.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can only get they'll only go as far as their trucks can drive in a day. So that's the range of Utz products.
Oh, wow.
Cool. Yeah, it's all about freshness supposedly. But in any case, yeah, it was Utz. But when I was little, they were Old Bay crab chips, and I liked the taste of them so much, and I could do it with crabs too. That I could actually imagine the flavor so well that I could make my eyes water from them. Like I could sit in class and just recall the flavor and the taste so much that I could actually start like making my eyes water from the heat. So it's just, obviously it's just this kind of learned response that my body had,
Yeah.
And I wonder if something similar was going on,
I don't know. Well, and like if I get like really scared, if I'm like in a situation that, there's fear, it's like my eyes will sort of well up. And again, it's not like a crying thing, but it's just like a response. But I just felt like this was just so weird because there was like not even a hint of like fear or so then my, now wife at the time, fiance, she would come up and stay every now and then. And I was really like hesitant to tell her, because I'm like, I love this kind of stuff. Like, I think it's just fascinating. And, like and at that point I was doing like a ton of research, and I'm like every spare moment, I'm like, trying to find anybody that's like seen these orbs, but even just the terminology of orbs,
yeah, it's problematic.
It's really difficult.
In this field. Yeah.
It's really tough. But I'll go into this after I tell you this. So my wife at the time, or my wife now, had come up, and we were like hanging out or whatever, and I'm trying to think how this went, because this has been a while. I'm 30. I just turned 38 in June, so I would have been 27, I guess. And no. Oh yeah. So I'm facing like the direction of the loft. So I'm facing left, and then she would be to my right. And my eyes are kind of closed, but I see like a blue light. But then at the time, like I was always like a flip phone dude at that point. And my now wife, Courtney, she had she had brought like her laptop, her like little MacBook. So like, how it breathes.
Mm-hmm.
And like the little blue light sort of pulses.
Right.
So, I was kind of almost asleep, and I kind of saw it with my eyes, but then I just assumed, oh, it's just like her laptop. She just set up on the table, and she jumps up and like grabs me and is like, what the expletive is that? And she immediately was like, I just saw an orange ball. Wow. And I was like, it was weird because like, I kind of felt like had betrayed her for not even mentioning it, but like, it really felt good too, because it was like, man, this is like validation that I'm not like losing it, you know?
Right. I'm not seeing things. It's, you know, they're
yeah,
here.
yeah. And because most of them, other than like maybe one or two that I'd seen, you know, they were either I was asleep or it was, you know, like, you know, 5:30 in the morning, or so this was like really great in a way. But the weirdest part is that like, I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean you saw an orange ball? Because what I had seen was blue. And because I thought that it was like the breathing of her laptop, but
right.
So, and this happened several more times where anytime the two of us would see something, she would see a different color than what I would see.
Oh, wow.
Which, and I, you know, luckily, and again, I would never find it if I tried now, but I was doing all this research and I ended up going down a forum where there was a couple and they were talking kind of about the same thing. They were sitting on the floor playing video games and they saw like a little ball kind of like come out of the baseboards, you know, and the guy had seen one color and then the girl had seen the other color. So that's another fascinating kind of weird sort of thing. So anyway, long story short, this kind of happened, you know, I kind of spilled the beans and told her, hey, you know, this is something I've kind of seen. And for her, she was just not really having it because, you know, like I said before, to her, it's like, well, this is some sort of like paranormal thing, which equals, you know, it's probably like demonic or whatever.
Right.
So she never wanted to talk about it, never wanted to get into it or anything. But meanwhile, any spare moment that I have, I'm just like, you know, have 15 tabs open, just trying to find anything I can on like Orbs or whatever. So it was almost like the more that I was obsessed with it, the more that I kind of kept going down the rabbit trail. Like the Orbs, like I had stopped kind of seeing them. And then there was another night where we were both laying in bed and like I have cold chills right now even thinking about this, but you know, all the lights were totally off. We're both laying, both of us are facing to the left, which is like sort of facing the open loft, you know, like big, like 12 foot, you know, 13, 14 foot ceilings. And it was like 3 camera flashes in midair, like across the room.
Huh.
And it was absolutely terrifying to the point where I immediately, like there was no tears this time. There was no anything like that, but it was like this absolute feeling of like dread, like whatever this is not the same as like the Orbs or the balls or whatever. Yeah. And I think that happened again, like one more time, but to the point where like my wife, you know, she stopped coming up because she was like, I don't like this. But it was almost like I got the feeling that like, because I was kind of obsessing over it and kind of going down that road that, I don't even know. I don't think I even saw one of the Orbs again, but, the flash, well, no, actually I take that back. So we both saw the 3 flash, you know, and at that point we slept with like every light on, and it was really, we both got up and like prayed over the room, and it was really scary. And then I think we had seen like one like little thing, like flash or something like behind her again. And then I saw another one when I was by myself. But again, it felt like, because I was like kind of, I don't know. And she, you know, of course this is her like opportunity to say, well, you've opened yourself up to it, you know? So,
right. You
know, of course, like you know, it's evil or demonic or whatever. But I mean, I kind of think maybe she was onto something, but like whatever those flashes were like the opposite of the little wobbly, you know, balls. Yeah, it was terrifying.
This all happened at your mom's house?
Yeah, at probably 30 foot in like a separate little building from my mom's house up in Cleveland, Georgia. Yeah, her property.
Are there woods nearby? I know you said there was 2 creeks, but are there woods nearby?
Oh yeah, it's like surrounded by woods.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And again, like a lot of Native American sort of presence in the area, a lot of, arrowheads all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
2 like pretty big creeks like converge down in like the bottoms.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting.
And so, it's ripe with sort of all those, your typical sort of like ghost guy is going to be like, oh yeah, all these things are
right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't know.
I'm about to ask another one of those questions now. I don't know that it matters, but it's just one of the things that we kind of note because it does pop up. Is there quartz or granite in the ground? Do you know?
I'm not sure about I don't think granite. I think granite's probably further south. Mm-hmm. But it's all pretty mountainous. So yeah, I would say a decent amount of quartz probably.
Yeah, no, and again, I don't know what to do with that. It's just something that comes up a lot. You know what I mean? It is just something I'm curious about and something I know.
Yeah, no, at this point, I don't know. I almost feel like the little like balls or orbs or whatever felt like, and I don't know. I'm really kind of split because half of me thinks that like, well, it's got to be some sort of like atmospheric condition, like some kind of focus of like energy is just like creating this little thing, and even if it's just on like the visual spectrum, mm-hmm. but like I swear it was like it was like even if my head was kind of in the other direction, it was like it knew the exact moment that my eyes like would look at it, and they would immediately leave. And they weren't really like fast or anything. It wasn't like, because I've talked to a couple people and they're like, well, we think that, maybe it's some sort of like alien or like a drone type thing, which I've heard all through the years, which, I don't know, maybe, but this just felt a lot like it was just kind of slow and like wobbly. And like, it wasn't like really precise, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It would just kind of like amble into the wall and then it was gone. But then, like I said, like as I became kind of obsessed with it, those just kind of went by the wayside. And I don't know if that was because, that just happened to be the last time that I'd seen whatever that was, whatever those things were. And then because I was so like kind of opening myself up, it goes back to I don't know if it was Lovecraft, but you stare into the abyss long enough and the abyss stares back, or right. Whatever that
it wasn't.
That trope is.
I'm drawing a blank, but yes, I know the quote.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if it was that, or if they were kind of linked, and the first ones were supposed to pique my curiosity to the point of expelling all this like kind of obsession and energy putting into it, and they turned into the flashes. But it was like I cannot explain. Well, I've heard a lot of accounts of like when people would be in the presence of Bigfoot or whatever, and they would have that feeling of dread, and that's probably the closest I can think of when like the flashes would start. But it literally looked exactly like just like a camera was 12 foot up in the air, and it was like a flash, and probably 8 foot to the right flash, another 6 to 8 foot flash. It's like it went completely across like this really big open room. But the feeling was it was awful. You just felt like, man, we're about to die.
And both times you saw it, just 3 flashes, 1, 2, 3, and then.
Well, no. So the first one that my wife and I saw was the 3, and that was terrifying. But then, if I'm remembering right, I think we had kind of caught like a flash out of our like peripheral vision, like, and I'm thinking that like maybe I don't know if I'm kind of filling in the blanks with lack of memory, but it was like you couldn't see behind like this, like the stairwell that would like walk downstairs to go into the garage, like the bottom level. So part of me is like, I remember it. It's almost like I remember the flash being like down at that like little landing at the bottom of the stairs. So it was like we would just see a flash of light, kind of coming up from like down a flight of stairs, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the last time, maybe I was painting or drawing or something, and I think it was like maybe kind of behind me or something. But whatever that was, like I would bet all the money that I had that it was, definitely like malevolent, definitely something dark, whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I always tell people to pay attention to those feelings, that they don't come out of nowhere usually for no reason.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild.
But it's crazy. But again, what's weird is like, this, I guess, like in my mind, kind of debunks maybe your sort of body was experiencing fear, but like your mind wasn't really whenever you were seeing the ball. So that's why like your eyes were watering. But they never did any of that with like the flashes.
Right.
Which is kind of odd. It almost seems like, like I said, like if I'm in those intense, like fearful situations, my eyes would kind of well up but yeah, none of that with the flashes.
Huh. Yeah. I don't know what they are, but that's wild.
Because and I feel like, and I don't know if it was you or if you were on, like Soraya's show or something, but I feel like somebody was talking about like flashes of light too.
Yeah. Well, so when we were talking, we did the original Site 7 shows, we were talking about flashes, and we were talking about flashes of movement. So we were talking about this white flash that we saw, and really what it was is just a flash of movement, not of light, that moved across the path. And a lot of people contacted me because they thought we meant flashes of light. So a lot of people have seen these white flashes of light. And
oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. Now I don't know if they described it the same way you did. Like some people just say it's like just a white flash that'll light up the landscape like day all of a sudden, and then it's gone. So it seems like, just from the mental picture I have of yours, you can tell me if I'm wrong. It seems like yours were more concentrated, almost like you said, like a camera flash, while somebody.
Oh yeah, like exactly like if like an old school camera with like those super bright flashes. Yeah, and but it was like it just like shot across the room. So it was like whatever this, if you want to say it was like an entity, like just sort of shooting, like burst out. It was like it flew across the room, like while I was doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of people contacted me. I think Soraya ended up doing a show on the white flashes. I'll have to ask him because I'm pretty sure he did end up doing a show on that, because enough people had contacted both of it. I mean, we kind of share a lot of stuff back and forth, and I think I don't know if it was after I was on his show talking about it or what.
Or maybe he was talking. I don't know if it was like a round table, or maybe he was interviewing Jeff. Jeff? Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. Maybe he had like an account or something.
I think he might have had something in his apartment, if I'm remembering correctly.
Man, I would love to find out, because I know Jeff
crazy. Listens to Strange Familiar, so Jeff, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, and of course you're welcome to come on and tell the story, because I'm trying to remember. I think he did have something like that. Now that you mention it,
man, that's awesome. Yeah, it's one of those things that's just, like everything else, it's fascinating, but it's like, I mean, will we ever figure this stuff out?
It's sad to say, but I think we don't get to know. I wish we did.
I don't think so either.
I wish we did. But, at this point, I think it's part of the human experience, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's been with us forever. We've been writing about it forever. We just called it different names.
Yeah.
We've been telling stories about it forever and just called it by different names. Different cultures have different names for it. But, as far as solving it, I really wish there'd be some answers, but
I know.
I don't think we get them. That's the thing. I don't think we get to know, which is Boy, got to live with that one, huh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we had briefly kind of talked over email about this, but with all this stuff, it's like I don't know. I feel like as a little kid, like I had mentioned, I'd check out all these books from the library, and like one book would be about Loch Ness, and this one's about Bigfoot, and this one's about UFOs, and it was very like easy to sort of swallow because okay, this is its own field, and then this is its field. But I feel like as the older I get, the more that I'm, number one, I'm not so nuts and bolts or flesh and blood anymore. I think maybe there's like a little bit of both as far as like UFO stuff. I think there's probably a lot of it that is our military or, black, crafts that we have that, we would think, that, oh, it's clearly extraterrestrial. But then again, I don't really know, and then you get into like all the, like the more high strangeness stuff with that. It's like, and I can't remember, I'm terrible with names, but, like one of the guys that was from like Lockheed Skunk Works did a speech and something about like, well, what do you know about ESP? And like, a lot of that stuff linked in with like the UFO thing. So it's like, well, are they really actual crafts, or is it almost more like an astral travel type, shifting into like different dimensions? And it just gets crazy. But, but I feel like, and you say like the other, I feel like, I don't know if it's like a trickster entity type thing quite, but I do feel like all these things are linked, like the older I get,
Oh yeah. I'm you can't be sure about anything. And I always say, if someone wants to talk about absolutes in this, they better be prepared to show their work, because you just can't do that. But my personal feeling as I go on further and further is just like everything is confirming, in Josh's words, it's all one big ghost story. Or if
absolutely.
you prefer one big alien story, or if you prefer one big Bigfoot story, it doesn't matter which one you choose. They seem to be all tied together.
But they overlap so much, though. Like all these UFO sightings, and it's like, oh, well, that's weird. This guy had saw a Sasquatch, or like the, especially with like the orbs and like the light anomalies, surrounding all these things. It's wild. Do you think that it's kind of like a trickster type thing? I mean, I've heard.
Could be. I mean, yeah. I mean, the whole thing could be, in a sense. I'm worried. The only thing I worry about, like calling it like a trickster, is I think people have this image that it is a single entity. Then being a trickster, like the coyote.
No, I don't think of it like that.
Yeah. I think trickster may be one of the names that suits the phenomenon best. If that, because sort of dance it around, but that's my way of saying yes, but I guess.
Right. Well, I think the trickster aspect is like, like the light anomalies that I saw. It's like, well, there it is, and you're going to wonder what those things were for the rest of your life, but you will never know. It's like, that's the trick.
Oh, yeah. And the thing about it can be very playful until it's not. That's the other thing. Like
so that is like a thing too. Like it just getting dark, certain things getting darker like that.
Oh, in my experience, absolutely. Like it starts out very playful and very almost childlike. And then at some point, I mean, according to the folklore I read, I broke the rules of this exchange that I was doing in Hex Hollow. I'm leaving out food, and I'm leaving out offerings, and I asked for something, and then I didn't take it. I got it. I asked for a skull, and I got a skull. It was a decapitated groundhog that was freshly killed, and the head was laying there, and I didn't take it. Which, according to folklore, I broke the rules, right? So then
you were so cursed, Tim.
All this bad stuff starts happening because I didn't want a gory, I didn't want to take a gory groundhog.
Yeah.
But I did get a skull, and according to folklore, I broke the rules, and then all this bad stuff starts happening. And I'm like, it's crazy. So I realize how crazy it sounds, but I'm like, as I'm reading all these, I'm reading this after the fact. I'm like, oh. I started this spirit gifting or whatever you want to call it. And then I broke the rules, and then I paid the consequences. But it got very dark very quickly, and it made me back me off a good bit for a while. But
then that could go into like, okay, well, is it you like projecting this sort of like wives' tale thing into like,
sure,
it's almost like a thought form type thing.
100% that could be it. 100% it could be me, laying the framework of this folklore over top of just a bunch of coincidences that happened. And I think that's the rub with all this stuff.
Wow.
The day that my son and I got attacked by the rabid raccoon.
Yeah.
It was shortly after that. It was at the same location. It started and ended at a crossroads, literally called Crossroads. I didn't bring any offering at all that day because I'd been so freaked out by the previous, having left the offering before, which is a no-no. You don't start and then stop. I'd stop, but I was leaving food and alcohol before, and I brought nothing this day. And then there's all these synchronicities that surround it. People can listen to, I think it was episode 50 or 51 to hear the full story. There's tons of synchronicities that go all around it to the point where it completely freaked me out. Like all these synchronicities just spinning around this incident. And I'm left like, was that a thing? Was that a message from, whatever I was dealing with? Like, you broke the rules, we're going to smack your butt now, or what, or was it nothing?
Or is it like some kind of weird, almost like pareidolia where all of a sudden you're just noticing all these things because
it could be
you're skinning this, you're putting a skin on the situation.
It absolutely could be. And I've said before, I choose to live a life of symbol. So that's a choice I make. So I choose to see coincidences
me too.
As synchronicity. Yeah. And so for me, it's a very, very strange and wonderful set of circumstances, but I won't argue if someone says that's just a bunch of coincidences. I can't convince anybody of that because A, they weren't there, and B, how can I argue that? I can't argue that it wasn't coincidences. It's all down to perspective. And for me, like I said, I choose to live a life of symbol and to see wonder in the world. It's just absolutely something that's essential for me. But
me too. Yeah.
And sometimes, believe me, I wish I could remove myself to that point and just be like, it was nothing. You're making too much of it. You're making too much.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will tell you this, my wife is a total skeptic about all this stuff. Tobe Johnson from Strange Brow, he sent me some items that he was left to leave out at the areas where I'd been leaving stuff just to see what happens. And one of the items was really, really neat, and I was like, wow, I almost hate to leave this out there. And and Alison didn't know that's what it was for. She's like, well, why would you leave it out there? And I said, oh no, it's like he sent it for that purpose. And she got very serious very quick. She said, oh, he sent it for that? She's like, no, we don't mess around with Hex Hollow. You got to put that out there. I was like, okay, all right. So, she's one of the most skeptical people I know who has, and I don't know if it's just a better safe than sorry thing or not, but she got very serious very quickly. It's like, no, that goes out.
But she's had quite a bit of like sort of weird paranormal type things, right?
She saw the flannel man. She saw the flannel man. Yeah. She had the black dog experiences when she was a little girl, which she never fully said were dreams, but she wouldn't say they were anything else either. It's just she's so much of a skeptic. I think it's hard for her to weigh in. And even now, after hearing I don't know how many, dozens and dozens, possibly into the hundreds of flannel man stories now, she still has difficulty saying it was more than a hypnagogic experience.
Yeah, my wife's the same way. I mean, even seeing like the orb stuff, and it's like, and I think it's almost like it gets worse like the longer the time goes by. It's like she forgets a little more and more of like how just insane this little space and time was.
Oh no, I think that's part of it too. I think the further away you get away from stuff, the more you kind of reason it away.
Right. Yeah.
That's why I'm so glad we have tapes of us that night at Site 7 when we saw those lights. If he didn't have that laser that was turning them off, that was making them turn red and blink off, I know at this point I'd be going, I guess they were just something man-made that we didn't know what was back there. I guess that's, you know what I mean? But we saw them act like no man-made light I know when you shine a laser in it turns red and blinks out, So I'm really thankful that A, we had that laser and there were 3 of us who saw it doing that, and that B, I have the tapes of that night so I can literally hear the wonder in our voice as we're looking at these things. And it's whatever they were, they just weren't like any other light that I know of,
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's very common for people, the further they get away from things, they'll start going, well, maybe what I saw wasn't what I thought I saw, And
maybe that's like a defense mechanism too. Like you're kind of building up a wall sort of between you and that thing that could be scary.
Mm-hmm.
So it was early. We were half asleep or whatever. Right. But
yeah. Oh yeah. I absolutely think so. Cause this stuff's nutty. It's completely nutty. So it's very difficult to talk about. And I'm lucky I get to talk about it with people every week. So
that's amazing. Yeah. And frankly, that was the main reason that I wanted to call in, is because I don't have a ton of people that I can talk to this stuff about, because either you're...
Thanks for listening, everybody. We will continue our interview with Tyler on a Patron episode. The next Patron episode will be the rest of my interview with Tyler. So make sure to go to patreon.com/strangefamiliars and sign up as a patron to hear the rest of that and more, many more. We have almost 50 Patron episodes now.
It's like a podcast in itself.
It's almost like a separate podcast.
Yeah.
Except it's the same. So we have the photo of the week.
We do.
We broke our streak. Last week's photo of the week is still available, but that was a little more expensive.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
Not everyone wants to plop down the equivalent of a nice dinner on a photo.
Well, it's still there. We'll keep it up on Etsy. We'll number them, photo of the week, number 1, number 2, number 3, etc., in case someone gets the bug to collect them all. So last week's photo, the dark fairy children, is still available. This week we'll go with something a little less expensive, I guess.
Price conscious.
And this is something, I did advertise this on the Facebook Strange Familiars group, but obviously the podcast goes out to a lot more people that are in the group before I advertise this. And we'll come back around. This is what appears to be, and I'm sure it's just appearances, a black-eyed woman.
What it is it's some heavy retouching on the part of the photography. It's a little less paranormal and a little more sketchy photography skills. But
defaming the photography of F.M. Buchanan from Indianapolis, Indiana.
The good part about it is, though, it's got the aesthetic down perfectly, though. Besides the fact that it has an aesthetic movement background, it really does look to me like she's some sort of medium, like that she'd live in, what's the town where all the mediums live? Lilydale, is that where?
I'm out of my depth here.
Oh, okay. Well, she looks like a mind reader or something, and she has very dark eyes. She looks like a black-eyed lady, and she just sort of looks like she's floating in the middle of the photo in profile.
Photographed by F.M. Buchanan of Indianapolis, Indiana. Actually, his studio was at 72 1/2 East Washington Street.
Yes. It's the half that makes the difference.
Exactly.
It has a lot of neat animal illustrations in the back, too. It's got an owl reading a book, a frog hanging from a tassel, a little bird. There's a lot of little animals hidden in the back. It's a really cool book. Yeah, and that font that says photographs that everyone in the 60s used for every poster. So I love that segue between Victorian and 60s.
So this not really black-eyed woman, how much are we asking for her?
How about if we make it $13.13 plus tax?
Oh, $13.13 and plus shipping.
Yeah, shipping.
$13.13 plus shipping to wherever you are. I will put it in the Strange Familiars Etsy store, and I'll put a link in the show notes as well. I want to thank Jason W. for his PayPal donation. I believe he's made more than one. I believe he's a repeat donator.
Wow. You need one of those little, like the blood pins you get if you donate a gallon.
So thank you, Jason W. I also want to thank Jerry and Vicky. Jerry's been on the show, and his wife Vicky. They sent us a very neat crucifix.
It makes me want to redo the whole wall with them.
Yeah, we have quite a few. This, Jerry said he bought it at an estate sale of a priest, and that he had taken these different items to these different holy sites to be blessed, and this one was marked with Lourdes, I think. So
wow.
Presumably the priest took it to Lourdes and had it blessed there, or blessed it there.
I would not think a priest's possessions would end up in an estate sale, but you never know.
Yeah, you never know. So thank you, Jerry and Vicky. That's a wonderful, wonderful gift. It is already hanging in the studio. Speaking of Catholic stuff, Brother Richard sent us a beautiful blessing bundle. A whole bunch of really, really neat stuff in it.
And the nicest handwriting. You know I'm an admirer of nice handwriting.
Yes.
It's beautiful handwriting.
Yes. We were very, very touched with that. Thank you so much, Brother Richard. I can't say enough.
He deserves his own podcast.
I would host it. I would host it on Strange Familiars for sure. We'll be back soon with another episode of Strange Familiars. Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts, music, books, art, podcasts, and more. darkhollerarts.com. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. You can find more at stonebreath.bandcamp.com. You can find Strange Familiars on Facebook, facebook.com/strangefamiliars, where you can also join the Strange Familiars gathering group. And we're on Instagram at Strange Familiars.
Tim, it's Jim. I have a story, and it's a very short story, but I think only you and maybe Josh would understand it. So I walk every morning because I'm getting old and I need to walk. There is a forest preserve that abuts my property, so I tool on over there. It's snowing. It is snowing, so there's no underbrush. There's no growth. Here's the weird thing. I'm thinking about your book, right? I'm thinking, well, you know, if it's not really an ape in the woods, it really could be anywhere. The minute I think about that, I get hit with a rock. A rock hits my leg. I look down. It's a good-sized rock. It's about the size of about half a mouse. And I'm like, what? Who's? I look. There's nothing. Nothing there. What the hell is that? Yeah. You got all the permission in the world, but like, what the hell was that? I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Of crows hangs on that tree to sing the death of a dream to me. Who is listening?
The dead and gray.
Where shall I find thee?
In the rain.
Water flows in bubbling stream over rocks and under me. Who is listening?
The twisting vine.
Where shall I find
The edge of time.
north wind shade my eyes from stars? Ring the bell and spread the cards. Who is listening?
The mist and cloud.
Where shall I find
Beneath the shroud. Tell me who to sing to them.
I am singing into the wind. Who shall I find thee?
under stones.
Flows in holy spring under sky and over me. Who is listening?
Walking sound,
Where shall I find thee?
dust and sand.
Dosing bird from the trees, call and screech my destiny. Who is listening?
Only me,
Where shall I find